Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OJP TFSC Learning Exchange Training Series, Working Better Together. Today, we'll cover how to manage subawards and subrecipients. Before we get started, if you are experiencing any technical issues for this webinar, please let me know in the chat box. So let's go over a couple of Zoom tips. On the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a microphone icon. This is where you can adjust your audio options, mute and unmute yourself. If you're not speaking today, please ensure you mute yourself just to avoid any background noise or any interruptions. To the right of the microphone icon, you'll see the video icon. You can use this to turn on and off your video feed and adjust your video options. To the right of those icons, you'll see the chat icon. You can just click this to open up your chat, and this is where you will communicate with everyone on the platform today. So let's test it out. Let's post in the chat the last thing you had for breakfast. So we'll give it a second here. I know people are typing. Great. All right. I see the responses coming in. And please keep in mind when typing in the chat box, the default setting is to message everyone. If you need to send a message privately, just select the drop-down icon and you can choose your recipient and compose your message. On the top right-hand side of your screen, you can change your viewing experience. You can go with speaker view or you can go with grid view. Finally, it is my pleasure to introduce our instructors. First up, we'll have Crystal McNeil-Wright. Crystal is the Associate CFO for the Grants Financial Management Division in the Office of Justice Programs. She brings more than 30 years of leadership and management experience in accounting, finance, both from the public and private sectors. And Crystal can be reached with the information provided in the chat right now. Then we'll have Russ Bermejo. Russ is a Senior Training and Technical Assistant Specialist for the OJP TFSC. Russ brings over 10 years of experience with projects serving children and families affected by child maltreatment and substance use disorders. And Russ can be reached with the email in the chat. We'll also have Zarel Exevedo. Zarel is the financial specialist for the OJP, TFSC, and a native of Puerto Rico, and he can be reached with the email provided in the chat. We'll also have Andrea Meselev. She's a senior training and technical assistant specialist for the OJP, TFSC. Andrea brings in 25 years of experience working with victims of crime at the Pascua Yaqui tribe in Tucson, Arizona. And she can be reached with the email address provided in the chat. Last and certainly not least, we'll have Francis Mendez. Francis is the project director for the OJP TFSC, with 25 years of experience in Justice and Victim Services Program, financial management, training, and technical assistance. Mr. Mendez can be reached with the information provided in the chat. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Crystal McNeil-Wright.
Thank you so much, Jamil. Welcome and good morning to all of our Pacific Islander grantees. As Jamil said, my name is Crystal McNeil-Wright. I work as the Associate CFO of the Grants Financial Management Division here at OJP. I also have several of my staff on the phone as well. We are here to support and assist you. I want to make it very clear, we work very collaboratively with the TFSC to provide the technical assistance that you need. I know that many of my staff have traveled to the islands to financially monitor your grants, but it's our hope that we can share some best practices and answer any of the questions that you may have, things that you might be having challenges with, not to hurt you, but to help you. And that's really our goal. Next slide, please. So today what we're going to do as we go through the agenda, we're going to have a grantee engagement. We're going to use Mentimeter. Some of you may be familiar with that, but you'll get instructions on what to do. And there we'll be able to ask some questions and you'll be able to put in some responses that we can address later. Then there'll be a presentation on managing subawards and subrecipients, the why, what, and how. We recognize that sometimes this is an area that can be very challenging for our grantees, and so we want to be able to provide some guidance through these slides and answer any questions that you have. We'll go through a case scenario activity as well. Then we'll have a breakout discussion. And of course, in this breakout discussion, my staff will be there from OCFO along with TFSC who will facilitate. And then here, use this time to really engage, really open up. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what areas you need assistance with. Then we'll go ahead and report out and do some Q&A on what we discussed. We'll have next steps and resources, and then we'll go through some closing remarks. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to Russ Bermejo, who will start our engagement activity.
All right. Thank you, Crystal. Hafaday, Talofa, good morning, good afternoon. It's so good to see many familiar names. Thank you for joining us today. If you have your phones, please grab them and you scan the QR code or go to menti.com and enter the 29309143 code. Might be just as easy just to scan the QR code. We'll have a couple questions for you, and then we're also going to use Mentimeter later for a quiz activity. But take a few moments to use your phone to log into Mentimeter, and I have a couple questions to ask. And as you're doing that, I'm going to change my screen here and go into Mentimeter. Here we go. There you all are. And actually, let us, here we go. So we want to know more about your experiences in subrecipient monitoring. This topic has been identified as one of the priority topics. And this year, the TFC is going to focus quite a bit on subrecipient monitoring, starting with the Let's webinar today. But we'd love to hear what is important for TFC to know about the needs of the territory organizations, your particular community, as it relates to subrecipient oversight. Is there something about subrecipient oversight in your island community that is particularly challenging or unique, and something that is important for TFC and even OCFO to know? If you could just enter that into the Mentimeter, we'll read some of those off. So what is important for TFC to know? No need to be shy. These are all anonymous. Reporting requirements, thank you. Yep. Compliance with grant conditions, timeliness of report submission. Yep. So reporting, big issue. What else? What is important for us to know? Local procurement policies and deadlines. We hear this quite a bit. Yep. Reporting to CFR. Thank you, everyone, for responding. Assistance with creating and monitoring manual catered for territory subrecipients. That's a good one. Reporting deadlines, grant compliance, or maybe grant compliance. All of our subrecipients are government entities and have lots of challenges. And procurement. Yep, we know that procurement, there's a lot of unique contextual factors as it relates. So this is helpful. Thank you, everyone, for responding to that question. And if something else comes to mind, put that in the chat also anytime today. And another kind of basic question: does your agency currently have subrecipients? So the majority view has subrecipients, so that's good. Hopefully, today's webinar will be helpful and informative. Okay. So with that, I want to turn this over to my colleague, Zarel Acevedo, and he is going to share the why, the what, and the how. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Russ. Welcome, everyone. So we decided to take a different approach this time to subawards and subrecipients, and we divided it into three main parts, which are the why, the what, and the how. Next slide. All right, so the why consists basically of answering two questions. Why does it matter? And why are subrecipients important? Next slide, please. Okay, so the three main reasons we've recognized why subrecipients are important include a subrecipient is a non-federal entity that receives a subaward from a pass-through entity, yourself, to carry out part of a federal award. Okay, I think it's really important to pinpoint that they're sort of your partner, right? Without them, you wouldn't be able to complete your program. Okay. Second statement says that as a prime recipient, the pass-through entity is ultimately responsible for the subrecipient's performance and compliance with federal and state regulations and requirements. Okay, so they're going to be your partners, but ultimately the responsibility falls upon you, okay, on what they do and that they actually comply with federal requirements, okay? And then the third and last part says that pass-through entities have a responsibility to act on behalf of the federal government and taxpayers to be good stewards of federal funding received. Like we said, they're your partners, they're an extension of you, and they have to make use, proper use of the federal funds that you extended to them, okay? Next slide, please. All right, so the next slide says, why are subrecipients important? Okay. First of all, they are your partners with a stake in the project, okay? I like to say that they have key interests in the program and they have key tasks in the program, okay? They fill gaps so the pass-through entity can accomplish the mission. Okay, so we all know that sometimes as grantees, we just can't take care of everything, right? So they help us complete areas of the program that we just can't do, okay? They provide a different lens and expertise. Okay, I think that, you know, many of our subrecipients have particular ties and relations with the communities that they serve, okay? So they provide a different angle that we may not know, okay? And then lastly, it says serve as liaisons and trusted voice. I think this goes back to the previous one. They have a particular angle and maybe even a cultural awareness that we maybe don't have, right? Next slide, please. All right, the next slide touches on why is working together better. First part says, address monitoring as a collaborative process. Okay, so when we monitor, we often come up with subrecipient shortcomings, okay? And to correct these shortcomings, it is more effective that you work together, okay? Second part says relationships take time and effort. Okay, we like to say that you should get to know them, okay? Take a look at the proposal, at the budget, create a grantee file, and know as many details as possible of what it is that they do for your program, okay? Third one says open communication plus clear expectations plus appropriate oversight equals thriving program. Okay, so we like to say that you should always maintain an open communication channel, okay? Also make sure that your subrecipients are 100% clear on what the role is in the program and what it is that is expected of them. And then lastly, always maintain appropriate oversight or monitoring to make sure that they're performing well, okay, and that they're complying with the requirements. And then lastly, it says communities are best served when agencies work together. We like to say that bringing together, different expertise and different experiences is a great way to help communities, with different angles and different programs. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So the next part we're going to cover is the what, and the what is sort of centered around the responsibilities. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So I wouldn't say this is an exhaustive list. I think that we as grantees have many responsibilities, but these are the most important ones. Okay. The first one says ensure subrecipients use grant funds in accordance with all federal and program guidelines. Okay. So in other words, make sure that the subrecipient is using the grant funds for the goals and the objectives of the actual grant program. Okay. Second one says oversee the day-to-day operations of subrecipients to ensure they achieve performance objectives on schedule and within budget. Okay, we always like to focus on the day-to-day operations part. This does not mean that you're going to set up shop in your subrecipient's office or organization. No. This means that it is your responsibility to ensure that the subrecipient is following the guidance of the program, and that they are mindful of the terms and conditions that were set upon you as a grantee by the federal agency. Okay, and make sure you pass those same requirements and guidelines over to your subrecipient. Again, they are your partner. They're an extension, if you like to say. All right, the third one says ensure subrecipients' timely submission of all documents necessary to meet all reporting requirements of the awarding agency. Okay, as we know, we are usually required to submit reports 30 days after the close of a quarter, and it's not in the best practice. It's not a best practice to give your subrecipients the same 30 days as you have yourself. Why? Well, because when they submit documentation or reports, they could be incomplete, or they could be erroneous, right? So you give yourself a few days as a buffer. We like to say ask for them, with 20 days. Okay, so that way you have 10 days to correct any mistakes or ask for data that could be missing. Okay. And then lastly, take the appropriate actions to get the subrecipients back on track if problems arise. Remember, they're your partner. They could have some deficiencies in processes, operations, or many other things. Okay, related to the program, and it is your responsibility to get them up to par and back on track. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, so we want to present the award cycle in the three main categories. All right, those are pre-award, post-award, and then the actual final closeout. Okay, in the pre-award category, we say that this is where we determine if it's a subrecipient or a contractor. I am not gonna expand on this at this point because we're gonna talk about it on the next slides. Okay, This is a little bit tricky. And then the second part of the pre-award is the risk assessment. We always like to say that the risk assessment should be part of the pre-award. Why? Well, if there are deficiencies, if there are areas that your subrecipient could strengthen, that is good to know beforehand, right? Not while the program is running, because then it could become cumbersome to address those faults or those deficiencies. Okay, if you know beforehand, you address them, and you start the program on solid footing. Okay. The next part is the post-award. So we talk about subrecipient. Whoops, sorry guys, I hit something here and I'm not seeing it. All right, the subrecipient award. That is actually the selection of who it is that you're going to partner with. Okay. Next part is the subrecipient monitoring. It is very important that, like we said before, the subrecipient is clear on what it is that is expected of them and what they have to do. And in order to do this, your written agreements have to be complete, and they have to be readily available to them so that they can refer to them to see if they're in compliance or not. Okay. Third is provide training. Like we said, they're your partner. They could have areas that they need to work in. Hey, provide that training, provide that assistance. Okay, and then the last two parts are reporting and drawdowns. When we say reporting, we're talking about both financial and programmatic reports. Like we said, ask for them in a timely manner. Give yourself a buffer so that you can correct any mistakes that they may have, and ask for any information that they could be missing. Okay. And then, like we said, the drawdowns is the last part. Final drawdowns are not completed until everything is in place and everything has been corroborated. Okay, but drawdowns as you go along the program should match their progress. Okay, and that's why we go back to the previous bullet of reporting. Okay. And then lastly, we talk about closeout. And when we talk about closeout, that is literally completing all administrative actions and grant-related work, and then handing in the final reports. And then if everything is okay, everything is complete, then we proceed with the final drawdowns. All right, next slide, please. All right, so now we go to that first bullet in the pre-award phase that we wanted to go into a little bit more detail. And that is the determination of a subrecipient versus contractor, okay? So we like to say that this determination is not always straightforward, okay? It could be a little bit tricky. There is no single one factor alone that will dictate if a subrecipient is a subrecipient or a contractor, if your partner is going to be a subrecipient or a contractor, okay? In fact, both could possess characteristics from both sides. And then when we get to the actual exercise of determining each one, we look at two things. The first thing is the form, okay? When we talk about the form, that's the sort of formalization of the partnership, of the agreement, okay? Is it going to be a contract? Is it going to be just a plain agreement? Is it going to be an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding? Okay, that's the form. But the key aspect that determines if your partner is going to be a subrecipient or a contractor is the substance. Okay. When we say substance, I always like to point out is your partner going to be responsible for part of the program, and are they subject to federal requirements just as you are? If they are, then they're a subrecipient. If they are not subject to federal requirements, then and are just limited to providing, you know, a good or a service, and they are a contractor. Okay. Now we're gonna go over with Russ, who is going to do sort of a prelim assessment to see, you know, how your knowledge is about subrecipient versus contractors is. Go ahead, brother.
All right. Thank you, Zarel. So we are going to do a preliminary assessment. So in some ways, this is kind of like a pre-test. So give it your best shot. If you're uncertain about the answers to these questions, give it your best shot. And in a few moments, Zarel will explain and provide the answers and the rationale. But grab your phone again, and if you're still in Mentimeter, no need to rescan it. It's the same site, the same code here. And I'm going to share with you a set of 6 characteristics, and you must decide whether is this a characteristic under subrecipient or is it a contractor, okay? And again, give it your best shot, and then we'll go through some of the rationale when I return this back to Zarel. So here we go. And I know this group loves to compete and competitive. We're not giving out awards. We're not even tallying points. This is a mutual learning for us. Okay, so here we go. First question: normally operates in a competitive environment. Is it subrecipient or is it contractor? You got 15 seconds to answer each of these questions. Submit your response. Okay. Awesome. Most of you got that right. Yep. Good job. Determines who is eligible to receive what federal assistance under the program guidelines. Is that a subrecipient or is that a contractor? Go ahead and provide your response. Okay. Again, majority of you. So good job. You're doing well here. Here we go. Has its performance measured in relation to whether objectives of a federal program were met? Is that a subrecipient or a contractor? Okay. Wow. Zarel, I think this group understands the characteristics. I mean, they're doing really well.
I think we're gonna have to skip the next slide, huh?
Maybe. You may not even do this. Here we go. We have a few more here. Provides goods or services that are ancillary to the operation of the federal program. Is that a subrecipient or contractor? The answer is, okay. A few more got this wrong, but still, again, good job, everyone. And we might have one more. Provides similar goods or services to many different purchasers. Subrecipient or contractor? Here we go. Okay, again, great job. Contractor. Okay, I think that's, oh, one more. Has responsibility for programmatic decision-making. Subrecipient or contractor. Here we go. Ah, my goodness. Great job, everyone. Zarel, I'm not sure you have to explain any of this. Maybe you can do that quickly, but we'll return it back to your presentation. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
All right, thank you, Russ. There we are. Okay. So I think we covered a lot of these under the Mentimeter, and the vast majority of you guys got it right too. Seems that you're subject matter experts on this. So I am tempted to just jump. No, I can't. Let's go over them. These are some of the key characteristics of a subrecipient versus a contractor. Again, sometimes they may be sort of a gray area between these, but I think these are good separators. So let's go by each one. The subrecipient determines who is eligible to receive what federal assistance under the program guidelines. Again, like I said before, they're your partner in this. They're sort of an extension of you. So they can, decide who gets assistance under the actual program, which they are part of. Okay. Has its performance measured in relations to whether objectives of a federal program were met? Again, like we said a little bit earlier, they need to comply themselves with federal requirements, okay? Third, has responsibility for programmatic decision-making. Exactly, they're your partner. They are not limited to just delivering a good or a service. They're an inherent part of the actual program, okay? Is responsible for adherence to applicable program requirements specified in the federal award. I think we just covered this. Just like you're responsible, they are as well, okay? In accordance with its agreement, uses the federal funds to carry out a program for a public purpose specified in authorizing statute, as opposed to providing goods or services for the benefit of the pass-through entity. Yep, again, they're a fundamental part of where your program is, and they're going to be subject to the federal compliance, okay? Now let's look at the contractor. First, provides the goods and services within normal business operations. Yep, this could be professional services or equipment, or any service that they could provide, but they don't go past just giving that service. Okay. The second one says provides similar goods or services to many different purchasers. Yes. Again, it could be a professional office, or it could be a store, and they not only sort of do business with you, they do business with a lot of other people, and who they don't partner up with. Okay. Normally operates in a competitive environment. Again, same thing. They're not your partner. They're out on the market, and are subject to it. Okay. Provides goods or service that are ancillary to the operation of the federal program. Right. They are not. They're not key. They are not indispensable. Okay. And again, they are not subject to compliance. And then lastly, it is not subject to compliance with requirements of the federal program as a result of the agreement. Those similar requirements may apply for other reasons. In a nutshell, like I said before, try and see them contractor. It's just limited to providing a good or service. They are not my partner. They are not subject to compliance and federal requirements, and they are not an integral part of the program and are not my partner. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So the last part of this presentation on subawards and subrecipients is the how. How can we work better together. Okay, next slide, please. All right, we're going to cover how to manage expectations, monitor budgets, and finally monitor spending. Next slide, please. All right, so the first part is how to manage expectations. Okay, so we say that managing expectations and keeping an, like I said, a constant open line of communication is key when working with subrecipients. Okay, try and formalize the award partnership. I think I touched on this before. When we say form, it's sort of, is it going to be an agreement? Is it going to be a contract? Is it going to be an MOU? Okay, the form. Okay. Second, hold a kickoff meeting with subrecipients. Interacting with them from the start is gonna be a good sort of way to start creating a close relationship with them. Okay. And then lastly, have subrecipients participate in regularly scaled check-ins. Like we said, this is not setting up a shop in their offices. This is just, periodically communicating with them, asking them if they need anything, if they need training, how are they doing, what challenges are they facing, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to cover how to monitor budgets. Okay, like I said before, starting strong is good, right? And a key aspect of starting strong is a good kickoff meeting. Okay, at that kickoff meeting, highlight what is allowable and what is not allowable. Okay, I think this goes back to being very clear with subrecipients on what it is that is expected of them and what they can and cannot do within the program. Okay. Second, it says explain the process for a budget adjustment. We can plan, but sometimes reality does not match what we were expecting, and 99% of the time we're going to have to process adjustments. So have them know what that process is, so that they can do it in a timely manner and in an effective manner. Explain the process for reimbursement and payment. Hey, Justice does, they need funds to run part of the program. Okay, so let them know how it is that that they're supposed to request these and get the funds. Okay. Explain the financial requirements. I think this goes hand in hand with the last one. Share due dates for financial reports. When we say financial requirements, we're talking about accounting processes, documentation, proper invoicing, proper receipts, document retention, et cetera, and then all of this sort of comes together in actually preparing a good report, and then a good report that is handed in on time. Okay, like we said before, remember that that buffer of at least 10 days that you should give yourself. The second part of how to monitor budgets is staying on track. Okay, when we sort of knock on their door or shoot them an email or however it is you want to approach it during those check-ins, you should ask yourself, does the budget reflect the requirements of the grant program? There could be instances in, you may start down a path that is just not aligned with what your program intentions are, okay, or your program goals are. So always ask yourself that. Is the total budget enough to implement programming? Like we said, we may have planned, and then reality is not what we what we thought it was going to be, may not even be close to what we thought it was going to be. So make sure that you're going to have sufficient funding, or even the flip side could be that you may have some savings, and then you're going to have to reallocate that money elsewhere. Okay. Third is our expenses allowable. Yes, always remember that you have to comply with federal requirements. Does the budget narrative justify the budget line items? Yes. It sometimes happens that budgets and expenses are just not aligning with what the program is, right? So they should be related, and not only should they be related, they should go on par in terms of their progress, right? For example, let's say you have a subrecipient who says they gave, I don't know, 50 seminars, and you see that there's not $1 expense for printing materials or anything of the like, right? So there's something off there. Okay, so will subrecipients share updated expenditures? Yes, the subrecipients should always have their accounting and financial records up to date and readily available when you ask for them. Okay. And then, are there questions about the budget? Yeah, like we said, there could be line items that are no longer applicable to what the program is. Okay. And then lastly, are expenditures on track? I think this goes back to what I said earlier. Monitor the progress. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, so the next part is going to focus on how to monitor spending, things to track, ask, and request, the famous policies and procedures, and then how do we respond to non-compliance. Next slide, please. All right, so expenditures, things to track. Okay, always track your budget, your project budget. Track your actual expenses per month and to date. Okay, I think this goes back to what I said. Your subrecipient should have good accounting practices, and they should have their numbers up to date. Okay. And then compare and say their expenses to date, because that is a way of monitoring their progress. Okay. Address remaining available funds, and then address remaining available percentage of funds based on the total budget. I think this goes back to what I said earlier. Monitor your progress and how it compares to the time you have left. Not only to the end of the term, but also due to the amount of work that you have to do within the allotted time. Do I have enough time to actually complete all the work that I was going to say I was going to complete, or have I completed too much and now I have way too much time remaining or funds remaining? Okay. Next slide, please. Expenditures, questions to ask. Okay, is there an invoice? This is part of a good accounting practice and documentation. If they're going to buy stuff, they should get an invoice from whoever provides that service or good. Okay, did activities work occur during the reporting period? Yes, very important that they are not including expenses that are not within the scope and the time frame of the program. Is there a clear breakdown of expenditures billed? Be very specific about what it is that you expended and what category it falls under. Okay. Are all costs allowable? Yes, always question whether costs are allowable. We don't want to have to go back if they are not, okay? And then, is there sufficient supporting documentation? Yes, always keep invoices, receipts, and every document that that you think is important. Next slide, please. All right, evaluating policies and procedures. Okay, ensure subrecipient has written policies and procedures to administer the federal award. If they don't have policies and procedures, you can always use your own as a grantee and or the federal policies and procedures, okay? Ensure subrecipients have what they need to implement or follow the policies and procedures. Yes. This is a tricky subject because sometimes subrecipients don't have the amount of personnel to follow policies and procedures. For example, separation of duties and things like that. You have to make sure that they are able to comply with those policies and procedures. Okay, and then identifying need for changes or updates. Yep, policies and procedures may become obsolete or outdated, and we as grantees and them as subrecipients should always be reviewing them. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we're going to talk about programmatic and financial reporting. It is important that you request periodic programmatic and financial expenditure reports and that you review them for reasonability and ensure reports are aligned with each other. I think I mentioned this a little bit a while ago. Make sure that they go hand in hand, okay? Ensure financial reports are received in a timely manner. Late reports could denote underlying problems, which could be either programmatic or financial. If there's a persistent tendency, request explanations and take corrective action accordingly. Yes, lagging and late reports could denote deficiencies in either the programmatic side or the financial side, and they have to be addressed. And then lastly, required subrecipient to submit all financial performance and other financial reports within a specified time after end date of the sub award performance period. Yes, this goes back to two things: be clear on what their expectations are, and remember to give yourself a buffer of time. Next slide. All right, monitoring reviews and audit requirements. Okay, so here we ask, is the subrecipient required to obtain an audit under subpart F for its most recently completed fiscal year? Oh, sorry, maybe slide is working quite loudly. If yes, did the subrecipient submit the required audit report? And did this report contain any findings or question costs? If it did, someone has to take responsibility for resolving things, and then also include a corrective action plan. Okay, and then after this, it is your responsibility to always monitor the progress in ensuring that they have resolved these issues. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so now we're gonna talk of some of the challenges that grantees and subrecipients have expressed to us during our needs assessments. First is need additional guidance to providing subrecipient training on allowable costs. Okay, the principal function of the federal program. What is the purpose and what is the goal, right? What is the mission? Grant management in general, and then reporting, okay? Another challenge is staff turnover. Yes, people tend to move on to other projects, and that sort of hinders the program progress, okay? Limited experience and information as a pass-through. Yes, this could be your first time doing this, and it does entail a lot of work, especially the monitoring part. So limited experience as a subrecipient. Yes, we could have partners that have not done subawards before. Okay, and then time zone challenges of stateside training. Yep. All right, next slide, please. All right, so now we're gonna have a polling question. And polling question says, what specific training topics would be most helpful for your subrecipients? We have 5 choices. We are asking you to select up to 2. They are allowable costs, principal function of the federal program, grant management, reporting, or other, which you can type in chat. We're gonna give you a few seconds. All right, we're at 8 of 26, 9, 10, okay. 12. 14, we passed the 50. See if we can get to maybe 65, 70. All right, 57%. All right, does not seem to be moving past the 57%. So the 2 top choices were number 1, reporting. Okay, so yeah, so reporting, what we have to ask for them, and then how to make sure that they report them. They report in a timely manner. And then the second one is grant management. Okay, anything and everything that entails grant management, which is a lot. Okay, that's a pretty broad topic. Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Next slide. All right, so now we're going to go over some training ideas, okay? We always say that you should provide training to all subrecipients. Sure, there are going to be some that are going to be in more need of training, but tell all your subrecipients that training is available and that you're more than willing to assist them in anything that they could need, okay, that could arise. You can hold subrecipient workshops, bring them together, implementation meeting to develop plan of action. Okay, so help them with with whatever it is that they may need. Don't just train them and let them do them on their own. Have a more of a hands-on approach. Okay. And then lastly, ensure subrecipients have the same access to on-site training and TTA, and invite them to participate. Keep them involved. Okay. Next slide, please. And lastly, when they are not complying, what do we do before we read these? Options we have. We always like to stress that this is a last resort. Train. Keep open lines of communication. Assist them in any way you can. And before you go into this and drop the hammer on them, exhaust all possible resources. Okay. Having said that, these are some of the actions you may take for non-compliance. First, temporarily withhold funds pending correction of the deficiency. Disallow all or part of the activity not in compliance. Wholly or partly suspend or terminate the subaward. Initiate suspension or debarment. Withhold future subawards. And then lastly, referred to, other legal remedies that could be available. These, again, we like to stress this, these are harsh and these are last resort. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, and then sort of part of the closeout process, record retention and access. Remember that at a minimum are the subrecipients record protection practices in compliance with federal requirements. They could be stricter, they could be more detailed, but they have to at a minimum comply with federal requirement. Okay. Do the entity's policies meet or exceed the federal return requirements? And like I said, they can't exceed them. They cannot be less than them. Okay. And then has the subrecipient retained all records related to pending litigation, claims negotiations, audits, or their actions involving records beyond the regular record retention requirements? Remember that they have to retain everything that pertains to the program they're working with you, but you also have to get to know them and know what it is that is going on in their organization as a whole, and that includes all of these. Okay. Having said that, that concludes my part. Thank you. I am now going to leave you with Andrea Mesa Leve. Take it away, Andrea.
There we go. Hello. I hope everyone is having a great day so far. My name is Andrea, and I'm going to be talking about the benefits of a timeline. It is a great tool to help get you organized and plan your monitoring strategy. As a grant writer and grant manager for over 20 years, I have used a timeline to help guide me throughout the grant cycle. It only takes a short time to put together, but when it is completed, then it becomes your guide to all the activity that needs to take place. During this presentation, we discussed the what, the why, and how of subrecipient monitoring, and now we can go put our plan into action. There was many times where I was a subrecipient, and creating or completing a timeline was part of the actual grant application. So I'm really familiar with these. They're really handy to have. And whenever I put my grant file together, I would always put my grant file on top, or my grant timeline on top, because it was just a really great reference to everything that was in that file. So next slide, please. So how can a timeline be used for monitoring subrecipients? It can assist with the planning, monitoring, and supporting subrecipients through the grant cycle. Supporting is really important, having that communication. Next slide, please. Using timelines for anticipated work. So ask the following questions. What are the planned activities for the upcoming week, month, quarter, or year? Is the subrecipient on track to meet objectives? Do timelines need to be adjusted? And who will be responsible for completing the task or activity? And of course, how can I use regularly scheduled check-ins to track their progress? Next slide, please. Using timelines to resolve challenges and obstacles. So ask as a pass-through entity, how can we address any challenges and obstacles with their subrecipients? So, have those conversations and have that be part of your timeline. Those regular check-ins are really, really, really helpful. Next slide, please. So here's a monitoring timeline explanation. I would like to explain what each column means inside the timeline. So let's go from the top to bottom of each column. So first, we're going to begin with the start date. So here you want to recognize the start date and plan accordingly. So this is your starting point. The start date can be a day, a month, quarterly, or annually. It can be whatever you need it to be to start your activity working towards your goals and objectives. And of course, make sure that your timeframes are doable and reachable. In the next column, we're going to look at the project goals. So here you want to look at what do you want to achieve? determine what your grant goals are and your monitoring goals. Think why this goal is important for monitoring. And then we have the next column, which is, the related objectives. So here, what objectives are to be attained? And what are your outcomes or results that are needed or wanted? We also have our next column, which is activity. So here, this is what actions are needed to carry out your goals and objectives. So you want to make a list of your activity. It's kind of like your to-do list. This is how you're going to do it and how it gets done. And then of course we have the completion date in the next column. Now this is the deadline to complete your task or meet your goal. So here you want to check for your important dates in your award condition, know when those reports are due, or know your deadlines, okay? And it's also important to look at your deadlines, and that also helps you to start or determine your start date, because that way you can give yourself ample time or the cushion that you need in order to get that task done. So definitely you want to look at your deadline date when you consider your start dates. And then in the last column is who's the person or persons responsible to complete this task. So here, this is important because here you want to put who's held accountable to complete that goal, that task, that activity. And you want to add their full name and job title. So it could also be multiple people, because there might be multiple people working on one goal or task. So here is where you kind of can hold that person accountable to getting that activity completed. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the scenario that I'm going to read for a pass-through entity. And I want you to think about the specific things that could be monitored and can be added into a timeline. If it helps, write them down. In the scenario, the subrecipient has already been chosen to receive grant funds, and now the pass-through entity is setting up the timeline. Okay. A local victim services organization, VSO, has established who will receive grant funding under their federal award. The VSO is now the pass-through entity, and they have a common goal with their subrecipient. The VSO must establish a plan to monitor this subrecipient during the 3-year grant period. There are monitoring steps that must take place to ensure that the subrecipient is meeting the requirements of the award conditions. The VSO must pay attention to the overall progress of the subrecipient and review their policies and procedures to ensure that compliance is being met. The VSO must also review their financial position to observe allowable expenses and look for any unallowable expense. Lastly, the VSO must schedule regular reviews to discuss any successes or failures and produce solutions. In addition, it is important to look at how the subrecipient is collecting data for their closeout reporting and record retention. A timeline is created to help the pass-through entity plan their strategy to monitor this subrecipient. Next slide, please. So here is an example monitoring timeline for a pass-through entity. Now, when we look at this timeline, let's look at the goal listed in the first row. So here we're going to be going from left to right. And in the first row, the goal is to conduct grant orientation with the subrecipient. So here we have our start date, which is within the first month of the grant award. You can put the month here, you can put however, whatever works for you here. And then you can, in the next box, you have the project goal. So that's to conduct grant orientation. Now the objective is to provide monitoring expectations to subrecipients. And then in the activity box, here, maybe you need to develop those expectations, what you want to share with the subrecipients. Maybe you need to make the meeting arrangements. And then you have your completion date in the next box. So you want to have this completed by the end of the first month, since you said you want to start this within the first month of the grant award. And then the last box is list the person or person responsible to complete this task and add their name and their job title. Now in the second row, the goal is to conduct regular reviews with subrecipients. So you want to do this every 90 days during the grant award. So you can put the month, whatever month it lands on, that's, you determine that. And then you have your project goal, which is to conduct regular monetary reviews. And then the next box, your objectives are to review the internal controls and policy for success and compliance. So for your activity box, maybe you need to develop a list of what is to be reviewed. And then each time you meet, that could change, right? You could have a different topic in there. You will also need to discuss and document your review findings. So that would go here in your activity box. And then of course, the next box is your completion date, and you want to have this completed every 90 days. And then of course, the last box is to list your person or persons responsible for completing that task. Put their name and job title. So in the third row, the goal is to complete your grant closeout reporting. So your start date is to determine when to start your closeout report. Again, the project goal is to complete that closeout report. And in the objectives box, you want to document all the activity that took place and also assure record retention is in place. So in your activity box, maybe you need to compile the data that needs to be added to that closeout report. And you also need to secure that all records are properly secured for the closeout. So your completion date, you want to have that done by the deadline. So know that deadline date for that closeout report. And of course, you list the person or persons responsible for completing that closeout report with their name and their job title. So as you can see, I did not add everything that could go inside this timeline. The thing to remember is that each timeline is unique to your needs, and they can be changed, adjusted, and updated if they need to be. So this is the end of this timeline presentation, and I want to thank everyone for listening. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so here's the polling question. And while I'm reading the question, please go ahead and provide your answers. So what are some monitoring goals and objectives that you want to focus on with your subrecipients? You can select up to 3. So we have budgeting, spending, reporting, closeout, policies and procedures, implement training, and other. And in that other category, we would love to see what you provide in that area. I think that we really can help learn from each other. So let's see. Look at that. Looks like reporting is winning there. Okay. It looks like we definitely have reporting as being the big one. Yes, absolutely. Reporting. There's a lot that goes into reporting, right? And then of course, spending. So being able to look at those allowable and unallowable costs. Also spending in time, right? Making sure that we're spending it in time. So that's great. All right. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here we're going to go into our breakout session. And the question here is, share the monitoring goals and objectives topics that you selected during the poll and list your reasons why. And please prepare to share your ideas during our report out. Thank you, everybody.
And we're all back.
All right. Thank you, Jamil. If we can go to the next slide. So why don't we have folks report out how it went, take a few minutes. So let's go to Nicole. Nicole, do you want to share with us what the group talked about?
Sure. So Millie actually spoke, and so did Conrad, in terms of what they selected. for their subrecipient monitoring on the poll. Two of the areas selected was reporting and budget, and also Conrad selected training. So those are things that we discussed in our group. Millie actually was giving us a little bit of an overview in terms of their selection process, but we were unable to finish during that time. But it was really thorough in terms of her explanation.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Carlin, you want to update us on your group?
Absolutely. Grace shared a lot of information with us. She mentioned having an open dialogue with the partners, goes a long way to building trust and, fostering relationships. She also mentioned developing templates to receive that specific information from the partners, which in turn helps them out extrapolate the data. And then lastly, she did mention a challenge was implementing a policy. Developing one was not the problem, but implementing it in place just to carve out enough time to build that into their process. So again, the the timeline that was presented earlier, actually be a good tool that I mentioned to her that can help you, carve out that time in the future.
Great, thank you. So in our group, which was led by Zarel, we talked about managing expectations and tools that can be used around reporting, like templates, guides, that kind of guides for grantees. We also talked about templates for invoicing and making sure if those are provided that you don't have the prime organization's name in there. You sort of insert your organization because you don't want to like copy and paste it and send you an invoice with your head of your organization's name. Sonia shared about some of her best practices with templates, and also about how to monitor activities to make sure that, well, one, to make sure what's awarded is in line with their timeline, right? And it's realistic that they're going to be able to spend it, and then monitoring to make sure they're able to meet those activities in the timeline. So some of the things we were able to share. So thank you, everyone, for sharing your ideas and participating in the breakout. I'm now going to turn it over to Jamil, who's going to talk about resources and next up. Jamil?
All righty. Thank you, Francis. So let's review some final tips and takeaways from today's session. Here are a few resources if you want to learn more about subrecipient monitoring, and I'll post a little more information about them in the chat for you right now. Next slide, please. Electronic access to circulars and common rules. I'll post these links for you in the chat. There you go. All right, let's go to the next slide. At TFSC, when it comes to successfully managing your grant award, we believe you can do it and we can help. Here are 3 things you can do today to help you with that. First, you can visit our website for resources. You can register for the OJP FMVS, and you can contact us for customized TTA. OJP TFSC. We provide training, technical assistance, and resources to help financial management capacity for grantees in the U.S. territories to improve financial management of federal awards. And share in a chat these links you're seeing on your screen for easy access. So visit our website with the link provided in the chat and subscribe to our email list with the link also provided in the chat. Next slide. On our website, you can access a library or resources on a variety of financial and grants management topics. For the topic we explored today, you can access the Subawards guide sheet, which explains when grantees might make subawards, the responsibilities of pass-through entities, and the difference between subrecipients and contractors. We also have the subrecipient monitoring guide sheet, which explains how grantees should monitor their subrecipients. And I'll provide some details for you in the chat for easy access. Next slide, please. Another thing you can do is sign up for the upcoming Financial Management Virtual Seminar scheduled for next month, framed around the life cycle of a grant, i.e. pre-award, post-award, and closeout. The series will deliver 5 live virtual sessions focused on priority topics to help grantees effectively manage their federal award. Completion of this training fulfills the certification required by your grant award. The FMVS training series is available to all OJP grantees. Aside from attending 5 live sessions, you will also have access to supplemental learning materials to enhance learning, such as videos, guide sheets, job aid checklists, case scenarios, and knowledge checks. This blended approach will ensure that learning is engaging, interactive, and impactful. Some of you may have already completed this when we offered this last fall, but if you didn't participate last time, right now would be the great time to register. I have included the registration link in the chat, or I will do shortly. Next slide, please. Here at OJP TFSC, we offer the VSC or the Virtual Support Center to answer any questions you may have about grant financial management. So anytime during or after this series, if you or your team have any questions or require any additional training or technical assistance, please let Sorrel or Nicole know. Or you can email us with the email that I will provide in the chat, which is also shown on your screen. We will make sure we get back to you in a timely manner once we receive a response. We are proud to partner with OCFO in supporting grantees. So if you have any questions for OCFO, you can email their customer service center with the email provided in the chat as well. And I'll put that in the chat for you right now. On behalf of the OJP TFSC Financial Support TTA team, we want to thank you for joining us today. Please reach out to us if you have any questions or if we can be of any support. And next slide. Oh, and thank you for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed today's session. Have a great day, and you may now disconnect.
Thank you.